That, I would now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, the whip of the United States House of Representatives, allowing him to catch his breath fully, Mr. Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I test my 40 speed getting here, but I appreciate the commissioners being here, coming to testify about their commission, and also about this net neutrality proposal that I know I have strong concerns about. I know a lot of my other colleagues have expressed real strong concerns about as well. You know, I guess when you get back to the basic question of what's worked so well with the internet and the technology community as a whole, you know, somebody who graduated in computer science, who's worked in the technology industry, I've always felt that the reason that the industry's been so successful is because the federal government hadn't figured out a way to regulate it, to slow it down. And then yet here you come with an answer to a problem that doesn't exist, a heavy-handed role of government. And the FCC's traditional role has not been to have a heavy hand. In this, when you look at the proposal that's come out, my goodness, I mean, over 300 pages of regulations. This is just the first round before the proposal's even been put into effect. I guess, you know, if anybody's looking for a free and open internet, I'm sure they look to the over 300 pages of regulations from the federal government to start that process. It's not broken. Why is the federal government here to fix something that's been working incredibly well, especially when you look at the role of federal regulations over the years and just what they've done to harm our economy? I do want to ask you, Commissioner Pai, because you made some comments earlier about the potential taxes and fees that can come with this Title II classification. And when you look at Section 202 of the law, it clearly gives that ability to get involved, for the FCC to get involved in regulating costs for the internet. And so if you could share with me just what kind of impact this can have on both fees being implemented, higher prices that consumers will ultimately pay from this new classification.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I think a multitude of fees and taxes are going to be levied on broadband in a way that is ultimately going to redound to the consumer's detriment. Just to give you one example, now that broadband has been reclassified as a telecommunications service, that order explicitly opens the door to billions of taxes and fees being assessed through the Universal Service Fund. So now, in addition to that line item you see on your phone bill, which only applies to your voice, the Universal Service Fee, you're going to be paying a fee on broadband, and that will happen, I would imagine, in the next several weeks or months. Secondly, and critically, there are all sorts of other fees that are going to be assessed. For example, currently, a lot of broadband providers that had not been classified as telecom providers paid a lower rate for the equipment that they attached to utility poles, known as pole attachments. They paid a rate under Section 224D. Now, because they're all telecom providers, they will have to pay a much higher rate at Section 224E. And smaller providers in particular will have to pay $150 to $200 million a year just for those higher pole attachment rates. Then you add on top of that the higher state and local property taxes that a lot of these companies will have to pay because they're now telecom providers. All of these costs have to come out of somewhere, and it's going to be the consumer's wallet, and that is one of the reasons why I'm concerned.
Yeah, and we've seen this time and time again, that these kind of regulations and ultimately these new fees and taxes that would be paid are ultimately be paid by consumers, by people that have been enjoying the benefits of the investments that have been made by private companies. This isn't the federal government investing. This is private investment to the tune of billions of dollars. I'll read you this quote, and maybe I'll let you answer it. Quote, "There's nothing worse for investment, innovation, job creation, all things that flow from investment, than businesses not knowing what the rules are." You want to comment on that?
I think that is, as I've pointed out many times, the bane of not just the private sector, but the consumer, to not know what is going to be allowed and what isn't. And it's exactly in that environment where the private sector is the least likely to take the risk, to raise the capital, to build the infrastructure that is going to connect Americans with digital opportunities. And I believe, as you pointed out eloquently in your statement, that part of the reason why we enjoy the best internet experience in the world is because we've had this historic bipartisan commitment dating back to the Clinton administration that the internet would be free from state and federal regulation.
That quote, by the way, was Chairman Wheeler at his confirmation hearing. I do want to ask you, Commissioner Riley, because you've commented on this order that it will negatively impact edge providers. Of course, many of the edge providers have been proponents of these net neutrality regulations, but you've raised some concerns about how even they would be negatively impacted, people that even asked for this. So if you can comment on that.
Yes, a number of people have highlighted on this, and this fact is that the lines between an edge provider and a telecommunications provider under our new definition are blurring over time. And so you may be today, maybe an edge provider, tomorrow you may be something else. You may have multiple parts of your business, and that is going to, that is problematic as you try to figure out how best to comply with our rules. More importantly, I believe that the Commission is going to continue to push its regulations up the chain. And so today is about telecommunications providers, and when we talked about that under our new definition, and then we're going to, we now are having a debate in terms of, and we're going to have some kind of structure to deal with interconnection or the middle mile, what used to be known as peering in my conversation. We're bleeding right into the backbone of the internet, and I think that only leads us to edge providers over the time.
I see I'm out of time, but I appreciate your answers, and hopefully this doesn't go forward. But with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. And now that I know the rules only require 2 members of either party to be here, we